My son sent me a text message that said, "Do not come to my wedding. My wife does not want to see you." I did not respond. Instead, I quietly closed his bank accounts. The very next day, both of them appeared at my front door. "I am glad you are here with me today. Please like this video, listen to my story until the end, and tell me which city you are listening from. That helps me understand how far this story has reached." I spent 32 years building a life I was proud of. When my husband, Robert, died suddenly from a heart attack, our son Daniel was only 12 years old. From that moment on, everything I did was focused on making sure Daniel never felt the loss of his father in any material way. I worked 2 jobs. During the day, I worked as a bank manager. At night, I handled bookkeeping for small businesses. I saved carefully, invested responsibly, and made sure every decision supported Daniel's future. By the time Daniel graduated from college with a marketing degree, I had built a comfortable financial foundation. I believed we had a close relationship. He called me every Sunday without fail. He came home for holidays. He often told people that I was his best friend. I believed him. Then he met Vanessa. At first, I was genuinely happy. My son was 28 years old and finally serious about someone. 6 months into their relationship, Daniel brought Vanessa to dinner. That was when I noticed the first signs that something was not right. Vanessa often answered questions that were directed at Daniel. She corrected him when he talked about his childhood. She would insist that the version of events he shared with her was more accurate than his own memories. At one point, she laughed and said, "Daniel, you told me your mother worked at a bank, not that she was a manager. Let us be honest about things." I chose to let it go. New relationships can be awkward, and I did not want to overreact. However, the behavior did not stop. It increased. Daniel stopped calling every Sunday. When he did call, Vanessa was always present. I could hear her voice in the background commenting on our conversation. She would say things like, "Is that your mother again? Did you not just talk to her?" His visits became less frequent. When I asked about Thanksgiving, Daniel hesitated. He told me Vanessa wanted them to start their own traditions. He asked me to understand. I tried my best. The engagement announcement came by text message. There was no phone call and no visit. It was a text with a photo of Vanessa's hand wearing a diamond ring that likely cost 3 months of Daniel's salary. The message said they were engaged and that the wedding would be in 3 months with details to follow. The 3-month timeline immediately concerned me. I called Daniel right away. Vanessa answered his phone. She sounded overly sweet and told me Daniel was in the shower. She explained that they were planning a small, intimate ceremony with only close people. I offered to help and told her I had been saving for Daniel's wedding for years. There was a pause. She thanked me but said they wanted to do everything themselves. She emphasized that they were adults and wanted to be independent. That word stayed with me. Adults. It felt as if I had been accused of treating them like children when I had done nothing of the sort. Over the next 2 months, I was gradually excluded from everything. I was not included in guest list discussions. The venue was chosen without me. Vanessa went dress shopping with her own mother. The cake tasting happened without my knowledge. It was as if I did not exist. When I finally asked Daniel directly, he became defensive. He told me I was being controlling and that he and Vanessa needed space to build their life together. I was shocked. I had only asked to see the guest list. Then, 3 weeks before the wedding, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Daniel. My hands shook as I read it. He wrote, "Do not come to my wedding. Vanessa does not want you there. She says you have been unsupportive and critical. I need to put my future wife first. Please respect our wishes." I read that message 5 times. Each time, it felt more unreal. My only child was uninviting me from his wedding. This was the boy I had raised alone. the boy I had sacrificed everything for. A woman he had known for less than a year had convinced him to cut me out of the most important day of his life. I could not understand what I had done wrong. I called him. It went to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I sent a text asking him to call me so we could talk. There was no response. For 2 days, I barely slept. I replayed every interaction I had ever had with Vanessa, searching for something I might have said or done. I found nothing. I had been polite, welcoming, and generous. On the 3rd day, sitting alone at my kitchen table with cold coffee and unopened mail, something inside me changed. The pain hardened into clarity. I picked up my phone and called the bank where I still had professional connections. Within an hour, I closed the joint accounts I had opened for Daniel when he turned 18, accounts that I had funded, accounts that still carried my name. The total was $73,000. Every dollar I had saved for his future, I transferred all of it back into my personal account. That evening, I sat in my living room surrounded by memories, the room where Daniel took his first steps, where we celebrated his graduation, where he told me about his first job. The photos on the mantel felt different now. I asked myself if I had imagined our closeness. I knew the answer. I knew my son. The Daniel who sent that message was not acting freely. He was being influenced, and I had been too accommodating to see it sooner. I made tea and began to think logically, the way I always had during my banking career. Vanessa had slowly isolated Daniel over 8 months. She rushed him into an engagement. She convinced him to remove his own mother from his wedding. I asked myself why. The answer kept returning to one thing: money. I searched her name online. Vanessa Chen, 26, listed her job as a social media consultant. Her public social media showed designer handbags, expensive vacations, and luxury dining. The lifestyle did not match the job. I continued researching and found references to a previous relationship with Marcus Hendrickson, a real estate developer whose financial troubles had been in the news. He was much older and had recently filed for bankruptcy. The timing stood out. Vanessa began dating Daniel just 2 weeks after Marcus's financial issues became public. I reviewed my financial records. The joint accounts were not the only connections. I had co-signed Daniel's apartment lease 3 years earlier. I had co-signed his car loan. I had also established a college fund at his birth, structured as a trust with me as trustee until he turned 30. Daniel was still 2 years away from that age. If Vanessa believed she was marrying into wealth, she misunderstood the situation. Daniel earned a reasonable income, but the real assets were under my control. Then my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered. A woman introduced herself as Jessica Moreno from First National Bank. She informed me that someone had attempted to access a closed joint account approximately 3 hours earlier. The login attempts used the correct password. She asked if it had been me. It had not. She told me the IP address traced to downtown Seattle, where Vanessa lived. I asked that all my accounts be flagged for immediate alerts. She agreed and asked if I wanted to file a police report. After the call ended, everything became clear. Vanessa had tried to access the account, not Daniel. She had his passwords. She acted within hours of the wedding text. This was not about love. This was not about building a future together. This was about manipulation, control, and money. And now I was done being silent. She had chosen the wrong mother to challenge. I opened a new document on my laptop and started typing. At the top of the page I wrote, Project Daniel. Beneath that heading, I listed everything I knew, every financial connection, every asset, every concern. Then I began making phone calls. My first call was to my attorney, Gerald Wu. He had handled Robert's estate and had known our family for more than 20 years. I told him I needed to discuss asset protection and possible updates to trust documents. He asked if everything was all right. I told him no, but that it would be. He scheduled me for the next morning at 9 a.m. By the time I went to bed that night, I had the outline of a plan. I would protect what I had built. I would protect my son, even if he believed he hated me for it, and I would make sure Vanessa Chen understood that I was not someone who could be ignored or pushed aside. I had built a life from nothing once before. I knew how to do it again. Gerald Wu's office smelled of old books and coffee. It felt familiar and steady. I explained everything without interruption. The rushed engagement, the wedding ban, Vanessa's attempt to access the closed bank accounts, my concerns about her intentions. When I finished, Gerald leaned back and asked what my goal was. I told him I wanted to protect Daniel's inheritance and ensure that if the marriage was financially motivated, Vanessa would not be able to touch anything I had built. Gerald confirmed that this was possible. The trust I created for Daniel did not mature until he turned 30, and I was the sole trustee. We could make it irrevocable and specify that the inheritance would remain separate property, not marital property. Even if Daniel married, Vanessa would have no claim. I told him to proceed. Gerald then suggested hiring a private investigator if I suspected financial exploitation. He knew someone discreet who specialized in background checks and financial histories. I hesitated at first. It felt intrusive, but I remembered the message telling me not to attend my own son's wedding. I asked for the name. That same afternoon, Rachel Torres sat across from me in my living room. She was in her 40s, direct, professional, and calm. She warned me that what she found might be difficult to hear. I told her I needed the truth. She asked for 3 days. She called me back in 2. Rachel asked me to come to her office. When I arrived, documents were spread across the table. She asked me to sit down. The first document was Vanessa Chen's credit report. It showed $47,000 in credit card debt, most of it accumulated in the last 18 months. Collection actions had already begun. The next document showed a court filing. Vanessa had been evicted from her previous apartment for failure to pay rent. The eviction occurred 4 months before she met Daniel. Then Rachel showed me social media records. The timeline was clear. Vanessa dated Marcus Hendrickson for 2 years. He paid for her car, vacations, and rent. When his business collapsed and his divorce became public, her posts about him stopped immediately. 2 weeks later, the first photos with Daniel appeared. Rachel then showed me a loan application submitted in Daniel's name 3 weeks earlier for $50,000. It had been denied. The contact email and phone number belonged to Vanessa. Rachel explained that this meant she had attempted to secure a loan without Daniel's knowledge. Signature comparisons suggested the application did not match Daniel's verified signature. This was documented fraud. I asked about the wedding and why it was rushed. Rachel showed me the venue contract. The ceremony was scheduled at Bellevue Botanical Garden. Vanessa had told the venue she needed to be married before the end of the month due to inheritance requirements in Daniel's grandmother's will. That statement was false. My mother had died 15 years earlier, and there were no such conditions. Rachel believed Vanessa needed the marriage certificate quickly, possibly to access benefits or strengthen her position before interference could occur. I asked for copies of everything. Rachel agreed and advised that Daniel needed to be told immediately. I explained that he would not take my calls. Rachel warned that once the marriage occurred, the fraud would become far more complex. I left her office with a folder of evidence and a clear decision. Daniel might ignore me, but he could not ignore a formal letter from an attorney. That evening, Gerald and I drafted a certified letter detailing the evidence and legal risks. It was sent requiring a signature. The next morning, my phone rang. Vanessa was furious. She accused me of harassment and legal threats. I calmly told her the letter was for Daniel and asked her to put him on the phone. She refused and threatened a restraining order. When I asked on what grounds, she ended the call. That conversation told me everything I needed to know. She was panicking. The next morning, I acted. The trust documents were finalized and filed. Daniel's inheritance was placed in an irrevocable trust, protected until his 35th birthday, with strict terms. No spouse could access it. I removed myself as co-signer from Daniel's apartment lease and paid the required release fee. The landlord confirmed Vanessa had caused issues with neighbors. I contacted the car dealership and began removing my name from Daniel's auto loan. He would need to refinance or surrender the vehicle. Finally, I filed a police report regarding the fraudulent loan application. I provided all documentation. The officer explained that prosecution would be difficult unless Daniel pressed charges himself. When asked if I could prove Daniel did not authorize the application, I had no definitive proof. Not yet. Not yet. But the report had been filed. It was documented. A paper trail was forming. That evening I was at home, exhausted, drinking tea and reviewing my next steps, when my doorbell rang at 8:30 p.m. I looked through the window and saw Daniel's car in my driveway. My heart lifted. I thought he had finally come to talk. I opened the door. Daniel stood there, but he was not alone. Vanessa was beside him, her hand gripping his arm tightly, not affectionately, but possessively. Her face was calm, but her eyes were cold and angry. "We need to talk, Mom," Daniel said. His voice sounded stiff, as if he had practiced the words. "Of course. Come in," I replied. They entered my living room as if it did not belong to me. Vanessa sat on my couch without hesitation, while Daniel remained standing, clearly uncomfortable. "You have crossed a line," Vanessa said immediately, "filing false police reports, trying to destroy Daniel's finances. This is elder abuse, Margaret. We could sue you." I almost laughed. I was 62 years old, in good health, and the police report was not false. "You committed fraud," I said calmly. "I did no such thing," she snapped. "Daniel gave me permission to manage his finances." I turned directly to my son. "Did you give Vanessa permission to apply for a $50,000 loan in your name?" Daniel blinked. "What loan?" Vanessa's grip tightened. "Honey, remember we talked about a loan for wedding expenses?" "We never talked about any loan," Daniel said, clearly confused. "Vanessa, what is she talking about?" "Your mother is lying to break us up," Vanessa said sharply. "She has been doing this from the beginning. She hates me because I am taking you away from her." I walked to my desk, took out the folder Rachel had prepared, and handed it to Daniel. "Read it, all of it, then decide who is lying." He opened the folder. I watched his face change as he read. Confusion turned into shock, then uncertainty. Vanessa tried to grab the folder, but Daniel pulled it away. "This says you tried to access my bank accounts," he said slowly, "that you applied for a loan using my information, that you have $47,000 in debt." "These are lies," Vanessa said. "She hired someone to fabricate this." "The credit report comes directly from the Bureau," I said quietly. "The loan application shows a forged signature. The bank recorded unauthorized access attempts. This is documented fact." Daniel looked back and forth between us, his face pale. "Do not doubt me," Vanessa said loudly, standing up. "After everything I have done for you, I made you independent. Your mother is controlling and cannot let go. She is sabotaging our wedding because she is jealous." "Jealous?" I said. "I am trying to protect my son from a con artist." "You are a lonely old woman using him for emotional support," Vanessa shouted. Daniel flinched. "Do not speak to my mother like that," he said. For a brief moment I saw my son again. Vanessa immediately turned to him, tears pouring out too quickly to be real. If you believe her over me, we are done. Choose her or me, your manipulative mother or the woman who loves you. Vanessa, that is not fair, Daniel said. Choose, she demanded. The silence stretched. Daniel looked at the folder, then at me, then at Vanessa. I could see the conflict tearing through him. I need time to think, he finally said. No, Vanessa snapped, grabbing his arm. We are leaving now. If you ever want to see me again, you will cut her out of your life permanently. She pulled him toward the door. He did not resist. He also did not look back. The folder remained on my coffee table. I watched through the window as they argued in the driveway. Vanessa waved her arms angrily. Daniel stood with his head lowered. Eventually, they got into the car and drove away. I sat down slowly, my hands shaking. The confrontation had been brutal. I did not know if I had won or lost. Daniel had seen the evidence, but he had still left with her. For 3 days there was silence, no calls, no messages. I did not reach out. I knew any contact from me would only be used against me. Instead, I rested. I worked in my garden, tending the roses I planted when Daniel was born. I had lunch with my friend Patricia and told her everything. I slept, ate properly, and tried to rebuild my emotional strength. On the 3rd day, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. This is Daniel's phone, but it is Vanessa. He does not want contact with you ever again. Stop harassing us, or I will file for a restraining order and sue you for emotional distress. You are not invited to the wedding. You are no longer part of his life. Accept it. I read the message carefully, saved it as evidence, and returned to my garden. If Vanessa believed I would give up, she did not understand who she was dealing with. 4 days later, an email arrived. The subject line read, "Olive branch." I nearly deleted it, but decided to read it. Vanessa wrote that stress had caused misunderstandings and that Daniel was deeply affected by the conflict. She suggested that as his mother, I would not want him to suffer. She proposed that I contribute $30,000 to cover remaining wedding expenses. In return, she said we could move forward peacefully and that she wanted Daniel to have his mother at the wedding. She also mentioned a prenuptial agreement, suggesting it would protect Daniel and prove she had nothing to hide. She offered to meet for coffee to discuss the matter like adults. I forwarded the email to Gerald Wu with one word. Thoughts? He called within an hour. He explained that the request for $30,000 closely matched the amount needed to clear Vanessa's known debts. He said the prenuptial offer was bait, designed to appear reasonable. He advised me not to send money, not to meet with her, and not to respond. I agreed. 2 days later, a FedEx package arrived. Inside was a thick folder and a handwritten note. Vanessa wrote that since I did not reply, she wanted to share their financial plan. She claimed they did not need my money and that Daniel's earning potential was strong. She included a drafted prenuptial agreement, already prepared, stating it protected Daniel fully and kept inheritances and debts separate. She asked me to accept the offer for Daniel's sake. I reviewed the documents. The financial plan was poorly constructed, unrealistic, and full of assumptions that did not align with reality. The financial plan was built on vague projections about Daniel's future income. It assumed he would be earning 6 figures within 3 years, which was unrealistic for his field. There was also no mention at all of Vanessa's existing $47,000 in debt. That omission alone told me everything I needed to know. The prenuptial agreement, however, deserved closer attention. I brought it to Gerald. He read it slowly, line by line, then looked up at me. "This document is worthless," he said. "It offers no real protection. This clause here states that any inheritance received during the marriage becomes marital property after 1 year. And this section about shared financial responsibility would make Daniel legally responsible for her debts if the marriage lasts more than 2 years. So the agreement did the exact opposite of what Vanessa claimed. If Daniel signed it, she would have legal access to anything I left him, and he would be responsible for her financial obligations. It was not a safeguard. It was a trap. Anger settled deep inside me. She truly believed she could deceive me. She assumed I would not read carefully or understand the implications. Gerald advised me again not to respond. He told me to let her remain uncertain. I followed his advice. Instead, I called my friend Patricia and invited her to lunch. Patricia and I had been friends for 20 years, dating back to our book club days. She was a retired family therapist and had watched Daniel grow up. Over lunch at our favorite cafe, I told her everything. She listened quietly, then said how sorry she was for what I was going through. I told her the hardest part was feeling powerless, knowing Daniel would not talk to me and believing he had chosen Vanessa. Patricia leaned forward and asked if I was sure. She reminded me that Daniel had shown doubt when he read the evidence and that he asked for time to think. She explained that leaving with Vanessa under pressure did not mean he believed her. It meant he was responding to an ultimatum during a highly emotional moment. She told me this behavior fit a familiar pattern: isolation, control of information, forcing decisions during emotional crises. She explained that doubt, once introduced, does not disappear, it grows. When I asked what I should do, she told me to continue exactly as I was, stay calm, stay consistent, document everything, do not react emotionally. She reminded me that Daniel was intelligent and capable of seeing the truth when given space. She took my hand and told me I was not alone, that Vanessa was trying to isolate both of us, and that I should not allow myself to feel cut off or unsupported. That evening I called my cousin Linda in Boston. Years earlier, she had gone through something similar with her daughter and a controlling partner. Linda told me the hardest part was waiting. She explained that trying to fix everything immediately often made things worse. She advised me to remain steady and become the safe place Daniel could return to when reality became unavoidable. I asked what would happen if Daniel actually went through with the wedding. Linda told me I would deal with that when it happened. She also pointed out that people who rush and manipulate eventually make mistakes. They push too hard, and their behavior becomes impossible to ignore. Over the next week, I focused on building my support system. I met Patricia for coffee twice. I video called Linda. I attended my church's Wednesday evening service and spoke with Pastor Mike, who had known Daniel since he was a teenager. Every conversation reinforced the same message: stay calm, stay patient, document everything, wait. Manipulators always reveal themselves eventually. The wedding was now 10 days away. I had no invitation, no role, no acknowledgement, but I had patience, resources, and people who supported me. I could wait. Vanessa, I believed, could not. The doorbell rang at 7 a.m. on Saturday, 1 week before the wedding. I was still wearing my bathrobe and holding a coffee mug when I opened the door. Daniel and Vanessa stood on my porch. For a brief moment, I felt hope. Daniel looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes. But he was there. "Mom," he said quietly, "can we come in?" "Of course," I said. They entered the house, and I immediately noticed how Vanessa positioned herself between Daniel and me. Her hand rested firmly on his back as she guided him to the couch. She was dressed impeccably, wearing full makeup and an expensive outfit. She looked prepared for negotiation, not reconciliation. Daniel sat down. Vanessa remained standing. "Margaret, we have done a lot of thinking," she began, her voice carefully warm. "Daniel has been deeply affected by this conflict. He loves you very much, and this situation has been extremely painful for him." I looked at Daniel. He avoided my eyes. Vanessa continued, saying she had reflected on her behavior and admitted she had overreacted. She said she understood that I would always be important to Daniel. Her words sounded rehearsed, controlled, strategic. She smiled and said they wanted peace. She said they wanted me at the wedding and wanted to move forward as a family. I told her that was what I wanted as well, but that some issues needed to be addressed first. Vanessa reached into her designer bag and removed a folder. She said my actions had caused serious harm. She claimed Daniel's credit score had suffered. She said his work life had been affected. She stated they had hired an attorney to defend against my police report. Daniel finally spoke. He said Vanessa had done nothing wrong and that the loan issue was a misunderstanding caused by paperwork errors. I repeated that the signature was forged. Vanessa calmly said the bank had made a mistake and claimed their attorney had documentation to prove it. She said they wanted to move forward, not revisit the past. She then outlined their proposal. She wanted me to withdraw the police report, stop the investigation, and issue a written apology. In exchange, I would be invited to the wedding. Front row, mother of the groom, family photos, a speech if I wanted. I asked if she was truly asking me to apologize. She said healing required accountability. She accused me of making false claims and attempting to damage their relationship. I asked what would happen if I refused. Her expression changed instantly. She said I would never see Daniel again, that they would move forward without me and build a life that excluded me entirely. Daniel tried to speak, but Vanessa squeezed his hand hard enough to stop him. I turned to my son and asked him directly if he believed I had lied. I asked if he truly believed I would fabricate something so serious. He hesitated and admitted he did not know what to believe anymore. I told him the evidence was clear and urged him to review it honestly. Vanessa stood up, her voice rising. She accused me of trying to poison him against her. She said this was why they could not trust me. I asked what I was trying to protect him from. She answered without hesitation. From happiness. From love? From having a life that does not revolve around you? Vanessa shouted. Any attempt at reconciliation was gone. You are a bitter, lonely old woman who cannot accept that your son chose someone else. I can accept him choosing someone else, I said calmly. What I cannot accept is him being exploited by a con artist. How dare you? Vanessa snapped, turning to Daniel. Are you going to let her speak to me like this? Are you going to defend your future wife, or are you going to sit there and say nothing? Daniel stood up, his face flushed. Mom, you need to apologize right now. If you do not, we are leaving. I am not apologizing for telling the truth, I said. Then you are choosing this, Vanessa said sharply as she grabbed her bag. You are choosing your pride over your relationship with your son. I hope it is worth it. She walked toward the door. Daniel followed, but when he reached the threshold, he turned back. For a brief moment, I saw hesitation in his eyes, maybe even fear. Then Vanessa called his name sharply, and he left. The door closed. I stood in my living room, my coffee cold, my hands shaking. That had not been an attempt to reconcile. It had been a demand. Give up your position or lose your son forever. And I had refused. I questioned myself. Should I have apologized just to stay in Daniel's life, even if it meant watching him be financially ruined? The answer was no. Apologizing would have validated her story and confirmed me as the villain. Worse, it would have shown Vanessa that she could control me. Still, the pain was overwhelming. Fear crept in. What if I had lost my son forever? What if he married her and never came back? I sat down and cried for the first time since this began. I cried for the child who held my hand crossing streets, for the teenager who called me after heartbreak, for the man who once told me I was his hero. After about 10 minutes, I wiped my face, straightened myself, and called Gerald. I told him everything in detail. He advised me to document every word while it was fresh. As I spoke, fear turned into resolve. Vanessa was becoming reckless. Desperation always led to mistakes. The wedding was scheduled for 3 p.m. Sunday at Bellevue Botanical Garden. I was not invited, and I had no intention of attending. I would not cause a scene that could hurt Daniel, but I was not finished. Saturday afternoon, the day before the wedding, Rachel Torres called me. She said I needed to see something immediately and emailed it to me. I opened my laptop and saw bank statements. Daniel's bank statements from the past 3 weeks. I asked how she obtained them, though I already suspected the answer. Daniel had sent them himself that morning and asked her to review them. Rachel believed he was starting to doubt and needed confirmation. I examined the statements. I saw withdrawals and transfers I did not recognize. Then one stood out clearly: a transfer of $8,000 to an account labeled VC Personal, Vanessa Chen Personal. Rachel explained that Daniel had been paying her debts. The transfers matched the due dates on her credit cards. She had been using his income to cover her liabilities while continuing her expensive lifestyle. The $8,000 transfer occurred 3 days earlier, immediately after I refused to apologize. Daniel had not yet seen this evidence. He asked Rachel to organize everything clearly. She told me they were meeting the next morning at 10 a.m. at a downtown coffee shop on Fifth Avenue. It was the morning of his wedding. Rachel believed Daniel was searching for a reason not to go through with it. Sunday morning, I woke at 6 a.m., dressed carefully, and drove into downtown Seattle. I parked across the street from the coffee shop. I watched Daniel arrive at 9:50 a.m. He looked exhausted. Rachel arrived at 10 a.m. exactly, carrying a folder. I stayed in my car. Through the window, I watched her open the folder and point to documents. Daniel's expression shifted from confusion to shock to devastation. He put his head in his hands. They spoke for about 40 minutes. At one point, Daniel showed Rachel something on his phone. She nodded grimly. At 10:40 a.m., Daniel's phone rang. He stiffened, listened, and stood abruptly. He rushed out of the shop. I followed him at a distance. He drove to his apartment building and ran inside. 10 minutes later, he came out carrying 2 suitcases and a backpack. His hands shook so badly that he dropped one of the bags. My phone buzzed. Rachel texted me. Vanessa had called Daniel screaming about money. He understood everything now. Daniel loaded his car and drove away. I followed. He did not drive toward the botanical garden. He drove toward my neighborhood. When he pulled into my driveway, he was sitting on the steps with his bags when I arrived. His face was streaked with tears. "Mom," he said, breaking down, "I am so sorry. I am so sorry." I sat beside him and asked him to tell me what happened. He explained that nothing had added up. Rachel showed him the transfers. Vanessa had been draining his account for months. While still at the coffee shop, Vanessa had called demanding another $8,000 immediately. Then he realized she never loved him. At the apartment, he overheard her on a call saying, "Just get him to the altar. We can empty his accounts after the honeymoon." He sobbed as he told me this. "I canceled the wedding," he said. "I called the venue and ended it. Vanessa does not know yet. She is probably already at the garden." He told me he blocked her number, packed his belongings, and left. "You tried to tell me," he said. "You tried to protect me, and I did not listen. I held him as he cried, knowing that the nightmare had finally broken, and my son had come home. "I chose her over you, and she was using me the entire time," Daniel said through tears. "You were manipulated," I told him gently. "She is very skilled at exploiting good people. I told you not to come to my wedding. I said horrible things." "Stop," I said, turning him to face me. "You were being controlled by someone who knew exactly how to exploit your trust. You are not the villain in this story. She is." My phone buzzed once, then again, then began ringing. The number was unknown. I answered and put it on speaker. "Where is he?" Vanessa screamed. "Where is Daniel? He is not answering his phone. The wedding starts in 4 hours." "Daniel is safe," I said calmly. "You did this," she shouted. "You poisoned him against me. I am calling the police. This is harassment." "This is over, Vanessa," I said. "Daniel knows everything. The debt, the transfers, the loan fraud, all of it." There was a long pause. Then her voice shifted, becoming desperate. "Put him on the phone, please. I can explain. It is all a misunderstanding." "No," Daniel said, taking the phone from my hand. "It is not a misunderstanding. I heard you. Clean out his accounts after the honeymoon. Did you really think I would never find out?" She tried to deny it, but Daniel stopped her. "I have seen the bank statements. I have seen the credit reports. I know about Marcus, the eviction, everything. My mother was right about you." "If you do not show up to this wedding, you will regret it," Vanessa shouted. "I will sue you. I will destroy your reputation." "Go ahead," I said, taking the phone back. "We have documented fraud, identity theft, and financial exploitation. If you pursue this, we will press criminal charges." She screamed incoherently before the call ended. Daniel and I sat in silence on the porch steps. "What do I do now?" he asked quietly. "Now you come inside," I said. "We make tea. You breathe. Tomorrow you figure out your next steps." As we carried his suitcases inside, my phone buzzed again. Another message from an unknown number. "This is not over." I deleted it. It was over. The week after the canceled wedding was chaotic. Daniel stayed with me, sleeping in his old bedroom, slowly recovering. Vanessa called 17 times from different numbers. Each was blocked. She sent emails that shifted from begging to threatening. Gerald advised us to save everything and respond to nothing. On Tuesday, Vanessa appeared on my lawn screaming that Daniel had stolen her belongings. I called the police. She was warned for trespassing and forced to leave. On Wednesday, Daniel and I formally expanded the fraud report at the police station. With his cooperation, the case became strong. Detective Sarah Chen reviewed the evidence and identified multiple crimes, including financial abuse, identity theft, wire fraud, and exploitation. On Thursday, Gerald filed a civil lawsuit on Daniel's behalf for the $32,000 Vanessa had taken. It was not about recovering money. It was about protecting Daniel and establishing the truth. On Friday, Vanessa's attorney sent a demand letter. Gerald responded with documented evidence and copied law enforcement and the district attorney. We never heard from them again. 2 weeks later, Detective Chen called. Charges were filed. Vanessa Chen was arrested. A restraining order was issued. The trial occurred 6 months later. Daniel testified calmly and clearly. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing included 4 years in prison, 3 years probation, restitution of $32,000, and a permanent restraining order. Daniel did not look back as she was led away. Life slowly rebuilt itself. 2 months after the trial, Daniel met Rachel, a teacher with a warm smile and a grounded life of her own. Their wedding was small and joyful, held in my backyard under Robert's oak tree. When Daniel promised never to mistake control for care, I cried. I began volunteering with survivors of financial abuse. Patricia and I created a support group for parents navigating manipulative relationships. My life expanded in ways I never expected. 1 year later, Daniel and Rachel welcomed baby Margaret Rose. Holding my granddaughter, Daniel told me I taught him what unconditional love truly meant. Vanessa served part of her sentence, lost her false lifestyle, and faded into obscurity. She was no longer part of our story. My life now is full: Sunday dinners, laughter, a garden in bloom, a family rebuilt on honesty and love. Looking back, I understand this truth. Real love is not passive. It is standing firm when someone you love is being harmed, even if they push you away. Trust your instincts. Do not ignore red flags. Document everything. Truth matters, but only if you can prove it. And never underestimate a mother's determination to protect her child, no matter how old that child becomes. Thank you for listening to my story.